theyeshiva.net.
We're on page 195. L'sfonasei ein mispar. The line starts mispar. It's like 10, 15 lines from the bottom. 195, column 2, Tzadik Ches, column 2. Chayav Einish l'psumah b'puri. The line starts mispar. Like 10, 15 lines from the bottom. L'tfonasei ein mispar, right? That was the last point. That Talmidei Chachamim ein lehem menucha. Loi b'olam haza v'loi b'olam haba. Because with Shloimeh there was 3,000 levels. But as he said, 3,000 is not really the maximum number. It's Yahalalu Chasela, because the Tvuna, the understanding of Torah, Ein Mispar, there's no number to levels that there is in the Hasag and the comprehension of Torah. Now the question is, Mashal, Nimshal, Mashal, Nimshal, Mashal, Nimshal, Mashal, Nimshal. Every Nimshal is a Mashal, and for the next level, and that becomes a Nimshal for the Mashal, and that Nimshal becomes a Mashal yet for the next Nimshal, etc., etc. And he says you can go infinite, non-stopping. Ein lemenuch. Where does it all lead to? Is there one Nimshal where it stops? Yeah. So you say Ain Sof doesn't stop; it's infinite. But as we said, Torah is called Mashal HaKadmoini. It's a mashal for Kadmoinoi Shel Olam. So in order to explain that, he gave the introduction that Torah has so many levels of Hasaga. That's what he started to say. There's Ribui Madregas Adein Ketz Ganed, Natachten Ganed, Alien, 3,000. But Vihine Eiraisa Mechachma Nafkas. The Zohar says, this is an expression in Zohar, Eiraisa Torah, Aramaic, Eiraisa in Aramaic is Torah. Mechachma Nafkas, emerges, Nafkas means comes out. Nafak, it comes out, it emerges from Chachma. What does this mean from Chachma? He doesn't mean that Torah has Chachma. Of course Torah has. It means that Torah originates from the divine Chachma, which is known as Chachma Ilah in Zohar. The source of all wisdom in the world. Hashem's wisdom. We say Hashem is a Chacham. The Chachma of Hashem, that's called Chachma Ilah. In other words, the way Hashem's Chachma is revealed in its highest, most pristine space. It's also known as Chachma of Atzilus, which is considered the highest world. That's what the Zohar says. Torah comes from there. V'hi makar v'shayrish l'chol b'chinas ha'asagas ha'niskarim la'el. And that's the first source and the root of all the dimensions, of all the layers and layers and layers of comprehension. That's the first source, the Chachma Ilah. From there, ultimately, that Chachma is the source from where evolves every state of understanding Torah, which, as we said, evolves. On one level, it's a nimshal, and then the lower level becomes a mashal, which is a nimshal for yet the lower level, which is, of course, a mashal yet for the higher level, but it becomes a nimshal for the lower level, which is a mashal for that, but that is still a nimshal for yet another level. But it all begins, it originates, the makar, the source, and the shirish is what's called chachma, Hashem's chachma ilah. This is intimated in the pasuk in Bereshis. The river left Eden to irrigate the garden. The river that left Eden, the Nahar, is explained in Kabbalah and Chassidus as Binah, understanding, like a river that flows and brings the water into an more expansive state. It comes from Eden. Eden is like Gan Eden, the garden from Eden. Eden, that's represented by Chachma. We explained many times Chachma is a nekuda, is a seminal point. Binah is comprehension. Chachma is like conception, like conceiving the seed, the sperm. But from there you can't have a fetus. The sperm can fertilize an egg, but now a whole embryo has to be developed. And that's Binah, that's the feminine quality, right? Chachma is the father, Binah is the mother. Chachma is like the blitz, the blitz, no? The seminal point. The aha moment, the nekuda, the epiphany, right? The inspiration. And Binah is the perspiration. It's taking the seminal point and developing it. So in Binah business, clarity, there's elaboration. Chachma is like the blueprint, the nekuda, which then has to be fleshed out and developed. But Hokhmah is the source for everything in Binah. There's no Binah without Hokhmah. It's like the fetus is the development of the embryo and the fetus development of the sperm and the egg. The seed of the tree has the whole tree. It's microscopic, but it's all there. And then the tree is a development of that. So Hokhmah is the mucker, it's the source for the Binah. It's like the difference between the well and the river. The wellspring may be subterranean, it's covered up in earth and rocks and gravel, and you have to dig, and you have a little well. And then the river is when the well is expanded and it becomes visible and it's not subterranean anymore. It's on top of the ground and there's a tremendous espashtus. Yeah?
Is there Binah Ilya also? Binah Atzilus also?
Of course. There's Chachmei Law, there's Binah Law, of course. It begins with Chachmah, it goes into Binah, yeah. Well, Hokhmah and Binah are called in Zohar Trein Reyin de la Misparshin, two inseparable friends. Trein Reyin de la Misparshin. Two inseparable friends. So all the levels of Torah, we spoke 3,000, Sela, Ain Sof, it originates in what's called Chokhmah law. That's the divine wisdom itself, the core of the Chokhmah, and from that Eden comes the Nahar. And the Nahar irrigates the garden, and then we know that the river splits off again. V'hayalar bar Roshan, there's 4 rivers. Right, there's the Tigris and there's the Euphrates, there's Chidekel and Pras and Gichain and Pishain. And of course, then there are all the other rivers that exist on the planet. So it begins with Eden. It develops into a river. It irrigates the garden. And then from there, the river yet splits, V'hayalar bar Rashim. But ultimately, it all originates in the Nekud of Eden. The question is, how much it evolved, how many Mishalim were given to be able to dress up the idea until it assumes lower veneers and it assumes lower incarnations. That's the word. You know what an incarnation is. How do we translate that? Yeah, but I don't mean here Gilgul. I guess it's called Gilgul. Yeah, it assumes new levushim. It's repackaged in new mishalim until it reaches the most concrete, physical, mundane level of understanding. Bridges and hospitals and chelim.
So now the nimshal is this world and the mashal is...
So we'll Upchines Chokhmah law atzma, and Chokhmah law itself, he pchines mashal, lepchines kadmoine shel olam mamash. And Chokhmah law, the source of all the mashalim, the ultimate nimshal, is also a mashal. What's Chokhmah law? A mashal? That's a mashal for that which is beyond Chokhmah. For kadmoine shel olam mamash, which we said kadmoine shel olam mashal ha-kadmoini. Torah is a mashal for kadman. Every level of Torah is a mashal ultimately for Chokhmah law. But Chokhmah law itself is a mashal for kadmoine shalom. And he said kadmoine shalom is beyond memalik kalam and beyond sof of kalam. It's atzmos Ain Sof. It's the essence of Ain Sof. It's called kadmoin. That which is beyond even the realm of infinity that's relatable to the worlds. So that's why it's called Mashal HaKadmaini. Ki agam she'erin sof baruch hu merum misnasi lein katz b'bchinas Chokhmah. How can you say this? The definition of a mashal is that it allows you to grasp something of the nimshal. The mashal transports the nimshal into a new paradigm, a new reality, a new world, emes. That's why you bring a mashal, and the student who couldn't understand the nimshal gets it, because the mashal is taken from properties that exist in his or her world. So I can understand that when you're talking with seichel. A lower idea brings you to yet a higher idea. A concrete idea brings you to more abstract ideas. I get that. A mashal brings you to the nimshal. But here you're saying Chokhmah is a mashal for kadmoine shel olam. The Eid of Ain Sof is exalted and aloof infinitely from Chokhmah. Ain Sof means there's no definition, not even the definition of infinite wisdom. Wisdom ultimately is a definition. The Maharal has a famous expression in his Sefer Gvuras Hashem. They didn't call Hashem Haseichel Baruch Hu. The Rambam has a definition about Hashem. Hu Amadu, Hu Ayedeya, Hu Ayaduan. The Rambam in 3 places, in Moreh Nevuchim and in Yad Chazak and Hilchas Yesod Yater and Hilchas Tshuva. He is the Mada, he is the Ayedeya, he is the Yadua. He is the knower, he is the known, and he is the instrument of knowledge. He's the knowing and the knower and the known. That's what the Rambam writes in 3 places. So the Maral said, I had a better idea. Chazal should have called him Haseichel Baruch Hu. The intellect, blessed be he. And they said, no, it's a Kadosh. Kadosh is from the word muvdal, prushim, aloof, completely sublime, even from Seichel. In other words, there's no definition, not even the definition of wisdom, awareness, discernment, consciousness, which are pretty good words. Consciousness, discernment, knowledge, wisdom, perception, understanding, clarity, right? These are words, enlightenment. Hokhmah, it's a big stuff, Hokhmah. Everything begins with some consciousness, but he says even that doesn't define Ain Sof. It's a definition. So how can you say Chokhmah Elah is a mashal for Kadmoina Shalom? Even Chokhmah Elah, which is God's wisdom himself, beyond all the levushim, the ultimate nimshal, everything is a mashal for Chokhmah Elah. The question is if it's 3,000 levels, 6,000 levels, 10,000 levels, or Selah, eternal levels, meaning ad infi. I said ad infinitum, he tells me ad in ketz. That's the nimshal, I'm using the mashal.
Escape.
Huh?
He escapes every single day.
He doesn't escape. You escape only when you're defined by it. Escapism is a survival method. When you're really aloof, you're not escaping. You don't have to escape. You don't have to negate. When you negate, it means you're connected, right? I hate you because I love you. Because I need you.
Well, every one of these terms is liberty.
Right, exactly. That's what's called pshittus, undefined. V'chol ha'eses sfiris, shirishis and ibchinas chachma, and all the 10 spheres, the 10 divine characteristics, which their genesis is chachma. Just like in a person, the genesis of all of our faculties is Chachma, which is considered the depth of consciousness, the core, the glimmer of consciousness. And then after consciousness comes everything else, whether it's love, whether it's rejection, whether it's understanding, whether it's perception. Whatever the experience is, it begins with some epiphany of consciousness, some Chachma. Which hachachma may ayin timatz. So all the essence spheres begin with nikrayim b'zoyar raza de shma kaddish. The Zoyar's name for them is raza, the secret of the holy name. In other words, he calls all the 10 spheres, including chachma, the secret of the holy name. The 10 koiches with which Hashem runs and created the world, even chachma, are called a name. Why a name? It's like a name of a person. The name of a person does not affect, or it's not negeya to his etzem, to his core and his essence. So the definition of spheris, legabe Hashem himself, is like a name. In other words, if I'm living myself, so to speak, in an island my whole life, do I need a name? When I'm communicating to myself, I don't usually call myself by name and say, hey, Jacobson, you think you want breakfast today? Huh? Well, you're internal. The point of a name is it allows the other person to identify me, to talk about me, or to talk to me. That's the function of a name. Person himself doesn't need it. So the definition of, even when we speak about name, not only in terms of technical name, Yankel, David, Matel, Shmerel, but a name in terms of a name of a person. The name, a Keser Shem Tov. What's the name? The name is your name. In other words, the way you're known by others. That's the definition of a name. The way you're understood, perceived. And we all know that name and the essence usually have very little to do with each other. Like the Medrash says, every person has 3 dimensions. There's who you are, there's who you think you are, and there's who other people think you are. And the 3 are usually not identical. In other words, there's your name vis-a-vis yourself, who you think you are, and then there's your name vis-a-vis others. But the definition of a name is already an externalized concretization of the self. Did you understand what I just said? An external concretization of the self. In other words, it's the way, right? You tell somebody's name and in your mind you have them. Really, what do you have of them? We hear a name and we have a filing cabinet. That's what it is. The Google inside of me has a filing cabinet. On this one, you meet this person, Shalom Aleichem, Good Shabbos. The files open up. You have a certain picture of who they are. What type of Good Shabbos you have to say, what you talk about, what you don't talk about. But it's all the way it's packaged in your perception. It has to do with the etzem. Sit with them for a couple of hours. Ask them to share with you everything about their life, and you'll see you know nothing about them. MS.
Because that's the core of what the person is.
It's connected to the neshama. It doesn't mean it's. You see, the Sfiris are called his name, so the name is a deep thing, but the name is. It's the way the soul. It's the channel for the soul's energy that comes into the body, but in a way that's relatable to others. In other words, if the person himself or herself, the name is precise, it's meticulous, but it's already a compromised form of the human self. A person themselves, mamish themselves, would not need a shame. It says in Bereshis, Adam called all the animals a name. Why did Adam have to call the animals a name? Because he was looking to file things, to label things.
Also, we see other people that have the same name and totally different people.
In a chanami, that's also true. That a name is not mamish. You look at a name and you have everything. We know the two people with the same name and they're very different. So why does he call Sphiris a name? Raza Dishma Kadisha, because the definition of Sphiris is the way it's an external concretization of divine energy. You understand? That's why it's called a name. This only increases the question, how can you say that Hokhmah is a mashal for Kadmoina Shalaylam? Emes, he says, this is all true. And how can you say therefore that Torah, which comes from Hokhmah, can grasp Kadmoina Shalaylam? Mikalma kaim Emes, but Ain Sof Baruch Hu Sheiru Mislabish b'Chokhmah. But the Eid of Ain Sof dwells and is manifested in Chokhmah, the divine Chokhmah, even though we explain that it's infinitely transcendent even of Chokhmah. He says it dwells in Chokhmah, Kamoisha Kasuv. This is hinted to in the expression in Mishlei, Havaya be Chokhmah. That he, Hashem, is, so to speak, manifested in Chokhmah. What does this mean? This means, the Kitzur, we spoke about this a few times, and that is, the uniqueness of Chokhmah over all the other spheres is Bitul. Chokhmah is a combination of two words, Koyach, Ma, the Koyach of what? It's the ability to say what? Ma. Moshe says about himself twice, V'nachnu Ma, what are we that you're fighting us? Ki salinu aleinu. Well, what are we? What do you think we are? You think there's an ego here we're trying to control you? Every other midah has an ego. The definition of Chokhmah is Koyach Ma. It's the openness and the curiosity and the inquisitiveness and the humility which we call enlightened ignorance. It's the ignorance that comes from enlightenment. In other words, the question, the ability to say what? What allows a new epiphany to come into your head, to come into your mind? When you stop trying to control. As long as you're controlling ideas and other people, you'll never learn anything new. You'll never learn anything new. Here I go with my mishalim. Somehow therapy just came to my mind, so we'll go with it. Yeah. Why am I giving a mashal now? He said what he said. Chokhmah das. Yeah. But you'll see, a big psychiatrist once told me, he's also a psychologist. I asked him, do you know, in the first session, if this is useful or it's useless? I asked him, is there a way, a litmus test, when you sit with a patient, the first session, you say, this is a bracha levatala, this is going to be a year of wasting his money and wasting my time, or there's potential? It's a good question, no? No, what do you think? He said, yeah, I know. I said, well, how do you know? He's been doing it for 50 years. I thought he would know. He said, if the guy comes in and everything is organized in his mind, like he knows all of his problems and he knows all of his wife's problems and he knows all of his issues and it's filed and organized, I say, this is bad news. This is bad news. If he comes in, the sentences are, he can barely finish a sentence. He's in turmoil. He says that's usually a good sign. Why? Because in the first case, I'm in control. I know it already. Now you're going to challenge me. I'm going to fit it into what I know before. And that's the enemy of real growth. The enemy of growth is to fit ideas in to your preconceived knowledge and notions. Now we all do it. But the state of Hokhmah is a state of Bitul. And that's what allows for a new idea. It's the Bitul, it's the complete humbleness. Even when you're trying to understand something and you work and work and work and you don't understand it, when do you understand it? When you become almost disgusted with yourself and your intellectual ego is destroyed. So your walls are down. So now you're open to actually an idea that transcends your previous parameters, your Kalim. No, Havaya b'Chachma is just a remez that Havaya Ain Sof is manifested in Chachma. So mitzad the Bitul of Chachma, it's a Keli for that which transcends it. Every other sphere has its own parameters, so it's a Keli only for that which is similar to its identity. But the definition of Chachma is that it seeks to go out of itself. So Chachma is a Keli for Kadmoina Shalaylam for Ain Sof. Anaya Cup. Anaya Cup. Because the definition of Chachma is that it seeks to go out of Kalim. Binah is already different. Binah is already, I understand. You know, somebody has a dilemma and then they say, I got it. So this Binah has a beauty. You can write it, you can publish an article, you can publish a paper, you can give a shiur. In Chachma, there's complete. In Chachma, I wouldn't say chaos. There is a clarity in Chachma, but it's a completely transcendent clarity. When that light bulb goes off in your head, there is a clarity, but it's around 5 seconds and it disappears. It's like lightning in pitch dark. Lightning, and it's unbelievably light, but if the lightning would stay, it doesn't. Gone. Now you have to use the light and remember, there was that which I was looking for, and now go find it and create your own source of light. Light your candle, which is never the same as the power and the electricity of lightning. We know how much electricity lightning brings to our planet. But what's the point here? Chachma, it's not, I got it. No, I didn't get it. It got me. It got me. I didn't get it. Binah, I got it. And when I got it, the it is always not as clear and as intense because it has to accommodate my identity. In Chachma, the I is bottled to the emes. And in Binah, the emes is bottled to the I. It's subservient to the I. In Chokhmah, I'm trying to accommodate transcendence. And in Binah, transcendence is accommodating me. Now, without Binah, you can't go anywhere because if it's not concrete, what am I going to do with it? Right? But the truth of it is always Chokhmah. We always crave back to go. When you had that epiphany, it was unbelievably clear. A day later, you try to recreate it and you can't. You could never go back to that place again in your life. It could happen unexpected. Number one, why could you never go back to it? Binah, you can go back. You have notes. Even if you had an epiphany and you took notes, it's an interesting thing. You had an idea, you took notes because you don't want to forget it. Remember we learned in the Maim of Rabbi Hillel about you don't want to forget it. You took notes. Next week you go back to the notes. You think you're going to have the original experience. You don't have it. Why? The words were there, but the oir is not there because Chachma is not words. You can't even remember. Even if you wrote down, I'm saying a chiddush. Let's say he's on a tape recorder. I still use the word tape recorder. Olav Shalom. Okay. You had an epiphany and you said it. It's usually 2 sentences. It's not an epiphany. It's not more than a sentence. 8 words. You said it. It's recorded. Or you wrote it down. You go back a week, a month. Forget a month. An hour. It's not there. Not that the words are there, but it's not that. You're like, no. It was much better. It was much better. What's missing? It lost something. It lost something.
Because you had to be there.
Yeah. But it's this even vis-a-vis. I'm not talking about the inspiration or makif. I'm talking even inside yourself. Why is it? The answer is because the words of Chachma are completely bottled to the oir of Chachma. Binah is about oisius. Chachma is oir. You understand the difference? Binah you could reconstruct from oisius. Chachma is not oisius. Chachma is oir. It needs oisius because we can't experience anything without oisius. But in Chachma, the oisius, the letters, the words are completely subservient to the light. And that light you're not recapturing when you have the words. It just doesn't happen. and you crave. Where is that experience? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? And there's something else about Hokhmah. You cannot initiate it. You could never facilitate. You could prepare for it. You can open yourself up to it. You could never say it's happening. It always happens unexpectedly. You know why? Because if I am trying to create it, it's not that. It's me. It's not Bitul. Hokhmah always shocks you. There's an element of surprise, even if you've been working 3 years for it. That moment when it comes in, you couldn't expect it. It's not like, okay, come in. If you're ready for it, it's not it. By definition, what's it, you're not ready for, because it's beyond the you. So the you could only open itself up to it. But I could never create the flow. It's something that comes from a place of ayin, the ayin inside of me. So the Alter Rebbe says, Ain Sof is completely beyond Hokhmah, emes. But Hokhmah is the keli for Ain Sof. Because the definition of Hokhmah is the only sphere that seeks to go out of keli. The definition of Hokhmah is, I don't want my structure. Every other midah is defined by its parameters. It's self-contained, and that's its uniqueness. That's its blood already from Binah. That's why Havaya is b'Chokhmah. V'lachein ha-Torah de mechokhmah nafkes nikras mashal hakadmoni. Torah is from Chokhmah. So Torah is called in Shmuel, the Navi calls it Mashal HaKadmoni. The Kamoi HaMashal Afal Pishenim Muhusan Nimshal Klal Im Kolzan Nimshal Malubish B'Teicha Mashal. Even though the Mashal is completely not from the essence of the Nimshal, it's from a different world. That's the function of a Mashal. The Nimshal is an idea, and the Mashal is a concrete physical object. It's not from the same world, but the Nimshal is Melubish. It's dressed up in the mashal. And in him and through him you'll get the nimshal. Without the mashal you won't get the nimshal. Really, the mashal is the nimshal? No, the mashal is not the nimshal at all. And if somebody takes the mashal and doesn't get the nimshal, it's very disappointing. Because when you get the mashal without the nimshal, you got nothing. You got a nice story. You got nothing, and yet only through the mashal do you get the nimshal. So you have an interesting paradox. Is the mashal the nimshal? No, b'chlal not. It's not like 10%, 20%, 50%. It's nothing. It's a different mohos. But the nimshal is dressed up in the mashal. It's like a garment. The garment is not me, but the me happens to be dressed up in the garment. And when you pull my jacket, it happens to be that my goof comes along. Right. You can't get to the nimshal without the mashal. It's a different world. I gave this whole confession. When was it? You thanked me for the confession. When was it? Sunday morning. About all the mashalim we do in this class. Huh? The Dubna Magid, yeah.
Is there a difference between the Mishal, let's say the first levels of Mishal between 1 to 3,000 until you reach Chachma Vatzilis? And then
Yeah, this is Seichel. Till Hokhmah is Seichel. It's levels. You can't compare the Seichel. You can't compare the Seichel of 2 plus 2 equals 4. Yeah? To the Seichel of profound biology, to the Seichel of abstract mathematics, Seichel of quantum physics, and then to the Seichel of Elokus.
You're asking if you really...
even within the 3,000.
It's also pretty quantum leaps, of course.
Between the first 3,000 levels till you reach Chachma Vatzilis, and then between Chachma to try to reach...
Of course, it's a different inyan. Because till there is a gather of Chokhmah, a raisa me Chokhmah nafkas. It's not just bigger in it's, as he says here, it's a whole different vart. You're graduating the world of intellect, the world of definition. Mashal and Nimshal are all in the worlds of definitions, ideas. Yeah, it's not about an idea anymore. God is not an idea, he's not consciousness.
In other words, so when you say it's clothed, the mashal and nimshal are more intuitively obvious.
Right. Of course. That's the chiddush here.
When you get to Chokhmah, though, now it becomes more of a pure kli to get there, as opposed to a direct parallel.
You look at the Mashal, you won't see...
So you always need help for that. How many people get the mashal without the nimshal? Right? Forgive my mashal. I'm now going to give a pretty stupid, bad mashal, okay? But they just pop in. So you remember how it used to be when we used to feed our children peanut butter sandwiches and jelly sandwiches? You remember? Today it's called child abuse because there's carbs and there's sugar and everything. But it used to be, you went on a trip, you got either salami, which as we know how healthy that is, and that was on a good day. On a bad day, it was white bread with jelly and peanut butter. You remember? Huh? And that was the essence of nutrition. And if you didn't eat that, you were dead, because this is how you're going to live forever, right? So what would a lot of kids do? Take the bread, you remember? Lick off, forgive me. You lick off the jelly, right? And you throw the bread in the garbage. And your mother is upset at you. Little did your mother know that you were just not trying to eat carbs. You were actually living a healthy life. Exactly. Yeah. So you could take the mushel, lick off the jelly, and throw the nimshel away. That's very possible. Very often, the mushel without the nimshel, you get the mushel, you never got the nimshel. That's very normal. So what's the conclusion here? So he says, it's not just Torah is a level of a mushel for a higher nimshel. That's true. There's something deeper. Mushel akadmaini. The Hokhmah and the Torah is a levush. For what? For Ain Sof, which is infinitely beyond Hokhmah. That's why it's called mushel akadmaini. A mushel on one hand is not taken from the world of the nimshel. It's a different mohus. It's chemistry, that's the word. The chemistry of the mushel is not made up from the chemistry of the nimshel. That's the important. It's not made up of the same stuff. The nimshel could be an idea, and the mushel is not. It's not made up of the same material. It's a complete alien essence. And yet, the nimshel is somehow dressed up in the mushel. And from the mushel, you can attain the nimshel. It takes work, it takes discipline. You can also not, no question. But it's melubish in the mushel. The same is true with Torah and Hashem. On one hand, Ain Sof is beyond Hokhmah. All the essence spheres are only called a name. It's like the name relative to the essence. So Hokhmah is essentially of a different chemistry than Ain Sof. It's not like 10% of God. It's a different chemistry. The mushel got the nimshel. But nonetheless, the nimshel is melubish in the mushel.
In the Levush in Sof, it says Levush Levor.
L'oid Ain Sof Baruch Hu. Okay.
If it's not even 10%, 30%, and we're just a mashal of Hashem, and how we have Hashem inside of us. See, you said it's nothing. It's reality.
But nonetheless, Hokhmah is a keli for Ain Sof. That's what he said. That Ain Sof is shoyde in Chachmillah, kamashakos of oita kasalma. We say in Tehillim, right? We say it on Rish Chodesh, Barchi Nafshi, oita kasalma. He dawns light like a tunic. You put on a shirt, a salma, and God puts on light. He dawns light. What does this mean? So he says this is a vivid example in Tehillim. Torah is called Torah Oir. It's light. God dawns light like a salma, like a lavush. You're dressed up in the lavush. Like the nimshel is dressed up in the mushel. Because Ain Sof is melubash and Chachma, and Eiraisa is mechachma nafkas. So therefore, through Torah, one can leihanes, one can experience the truth, the radiance of the light of Ain Sof Baruch Hu, mamish kadmoina shalaylam. Not only mamalik kalalman, not only Sof of kalalman, which is infinite, but it's relatable to the worlds, but kadmoina shalaylam, which means the atzmos Ain Sof Baruch Hu, the essence itself, which is lamayla megeder alman at all. One can have access to that through Torah. So yes, the levels of Torah are endless in terms of mashal, nimshal, mashal, nimshal, mashal, nimshal. It all begins with Chachmah, which is the highest nimshal. But Chachmah itself is a mashal for Kadmoina Shalaylam. Despite the infinite disparity and dissonance and gulf, not this, the gulf between Chachmah and Ain Sof, nonetheless, it's a mashal for the nimshal. Okay, we'll stop here. Be'ezer Hashem continue tomorrow. Dawns, thank you. He dawns light like a tunic. Yeah. Oh, wow, Abinyan Adayad, B'shal Tova Mutzlachas, Gavalda, exciting. Son became engaged. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, beautiful.
What I was saying, Rabbi Jacobson, when the person is in a state of Bitul, it's lead unless he has a role model, you can lead the other way around.
Of course, always.
Great state, but
You're
it's a very dangerous.
100%. 100%. Listen, the fact remains is whatever has greater potential for growth also has greater potential for destruction. Nuclear energy can light up the world and it can destroy a world. Same is true with nuclear energy in a person. And the Gemara says in Sukkah, Kol hagadol mechavera yitzra yoser gadol. Whoever is greater has a bigger Yetzer Hara, meaning it's always commensurate with each other. So whenever we speak about a great quality or a true quality or a profound quality, the profounder it is and the greater potential there is in the growth and goodness, there's the greatest if it's manipulated, if it's misconstrued, or he's in the wrong mindset, or is misunderstanding it and misconstruing it. So you're dealing with deep energy, with like better deal with, when you're dealing with baby stuff, if my business is making a small amount of money every year, it's a different risk. Yeah, when you're investing in one type of portfolio, you're investing, $1,000, different risk than when you're investing $5 million. The potential is unbelievable, and the potential for disaster is unbelievable. So I think it's very important to know this always. You're going for the big stakes, there's another side to it.
That was my disposition.
No, so it's true, yeah. And it becomes sad and tragic. The concept of Bitul, as he puts it here, is one of the deepest moments, because it's Hokhmah, and that's where you could connect to Ain Sof. And yet if it's misunderstood or misconstrued or manipulated, or an innocent person is used as a punching bag and as target practice, I'll target practice with him, right? Because why not? He's an innocent, flexible, pliable person. So it becomes, it could be a catastrophe.
That's why a lot of kids, especially the ones that have this super nuclear energy, in an environment where it's manipulated or misconstrued, can lead to a tremendous disaster.
Yeah. I must.
I've seen it with my own eyes.
I've experienced it with my own body.
Nice dream. To have a dream of 3,000 ladder steps. Like,
That's beautiful.
on muscle. And then at the top of those 3,000 ladder steps, there's another ladder with 3,000 more steps. Or maybe a few ladders.
Yeah. By the way, the ladder of Shloimeh doesn't only go in one direction. There's vertical, horizontal. Exactly. Because wisdom goes, so many different levels. It's not just always gradual, linear. There's circular wisdom as well. There's Yosher, there's Igulim. We learned, the earth is round, right? Misayfa olam vat sayfa. Not mitchilas olam vat sayfa.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.